Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Salaam Alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
In the name of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and final messenger. Family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Feachaz. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. So family, today's show, we touched upon this topic a few times before, but now what you're seeing is what we're talking about coming in full fruition. Okay, it's coming in full fruition. We mentioned that the reason why a lot of these particularly immigrant Muslims, they cape so hard for Zaddy in them is because they get promised bones and biscuits off the backs of the black community. That's what they get promised, right? So despite what the enemy does in their own countries in terms of warmongering and murder and usurping resources and things of this nature, they will come over here and twitch and twirl and twerk for Zaddy because Zaddy promised them the riches that Zaddy has. Y'all hearing me? But one of the important pillars of this whole diabolical plot is this push to make sure that black people have permanently not been competitive in anything resembling capitalism. That is the whole game and process. And this is not a new thing. And it shouldn't even be surprising, to be honest. The only thing that is surprising is that after 400 solid years of this enemy rebranding and redesigning the same tired tactics, y'all think that you can somehow appeal to the hearts of devils. That's the only shocking thing. Y'all hear me? The late, great Dr. Frances Cress Wilson, she mentioned in her book, The ISIS Papers, that the dominant society, the thing that they are afraid of the most is white genetic annihilation. She said this way back in the 70s. And that's why white supremacy is such an intricate and detailed system, and it basically controls every aspect of Western society. Whether it is education, whether it is judicial, whether it is capitalism, the monetary system, you name it. It is so deeply ingrained in the psyche of these folks that they must, by any possible means, preserve their genetic material, that they will literally do anything. She said this in the 70s. Now the call from white folks themselves, they are saying that they are the ones who are being replaced. And they're calling it great replacement theory. So much so that the president of Tunisia has repeated the very same white supremacist talking points in Africa against black Africans. So the only surprising thing is that after seeing how these folks think and work for the last 4 solid centuries, that somehow, they're just suddenly going to play fair and change. So I want to take you back to this article that we touched up on, where we didn't go too deep, but we touched up on it. And now we're going to read this article because it is very relevant to what's happening right now. 1 second. Like, subscribe, share. Hit me up on Patreon. 1 second, y'all. So this article here, I'm about to share with y'all. It is from, 1 second. Let me put it in the screen. This is from NPR, okay? And we mentioned that at the beginning of the year, Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau, they had this meeting, okay? So Joe Biden met with Justin Trudeau, both of them liberals, okay? Both liberal leaders of the Western world, okay? And they came to some sort of agreement concerning asylum seekers, right? And this was way back in March. And it says President Joe Biden went to Ottawa this week. The president and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a deal on an issue which they've both struggled how to handle asylum seekers in the U.S.-Canada border. Emma Jacobs joins us from Montreal. Emma, thanks so much for being with us. And this is the whole interview, right? But essentially, we mentioned shortly after this meeting with Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau, something started happening in Canada, never happened before in Canadian history. Okay? Never happened before in Canadian history. Borders got closed. And even up until this day, if you go and you read the Toronto news, you will literally see hundreds of asylum seekers in Toronto who are homeless. That never happened before in Canada. All of them are black. All of them black. Vast majority of them are African, a few Haitians, whatnot. But at the same time, while this is happening in Canada, and while we witnessed how the U.S. government handled Hurricane Katrina. If y'all can't remember Hurricane Katrina, go look it up, go Google it. Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and devastated New Orleans, a historically black city, absolutely devastated it. They started calling the displaced Black Americans refugees in their own country. Because that's how they see you, right? They don't see you as citizens of the United States or whatnot, right? If you look at what happened in Puerto Rico last year with that hurricane, was it last year? No, the year before, 2 years ago, with a hurricane that hit Puerto Rico. You've seen the non-interventionist attitude that Donald Trump had with that hurricane. And now recently with the fire in Hawaii, was it Hawaii or Maui? It was a fire in Maui. Joe Biden goes to Maui and he offers them, the citizens of Maui, allegedly United States citizens, $700. People who had their entire lives razed to the grounds, and he offers the citizens of the United States $700. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian president gets billions in aid to fight some Russians somewhere. And all of it is just history repeating itself. Especially when it comes to black folk. The first time the United States came together for a demographic shift was during the early 1900s, late 1800s, I think, late 1800s, early 1900s, with something called the Homestead Act, where they gave away millions and millions and millions of acres of land and invited all kinds of Europeans to come and partake in the American dream. That's what the American dream was about. The American dream was always been about free land, free labor. And they literally gave away millions of land to Europeans while giving the descendants of slaves absolutely nothing after promising 40 acres and a mule. This whole process caused the white population to outnumber the black population. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at what Dr. Claude Anderson had said way back, I think it's in 1992, this interview, right? And we're going to see what he had to say way back then concerning immigration, okay? Let's watch, y'all.
One of the things that I should mention right here is the fact that the book is filled with tables, graphs, charts, and the historical accounts of how such discrimination, prejudice, and racism, economically, politically, and socially, were engineered into our system, literally codified as a way blacks would be treated in this country. So that when we hear you talking about blacks becoming a permanent underclass, or we hear you talking about the inherent racism in the immigration system in the United States, you're not talking off the top of your head, are you?
No, no. See, the first immigration law was put in place immediately after the Revolutionary War in 1790, which declared this was to be a white country, and there was a zero quota placed on black folk. That zero quota stayed in place until about 1965. Based on the 1880 immigration laws, it moved up a slight bit, less than 1/2 of 1%, and to allow more blacks to come in. But in starting in 1965, it went up to 1/2 of 1%. That's why blacks are in a minority class in this country. That's why you cannot get Haitians into the country, because the larger society is extremely fearful of blacks getting a numerical dominance. And they built a quota system into the country, even in our immigration process, and into our to make sure that black folk do not constitute a threat.
And if so
he said that way back in the 90s about Haitians. Is this not the same plots and games that these folks are playing right now today? And on a much larger scale. They cause all this destruction and death in Haiti, in Africa, and even in Muslim countries, right? In the global South and Latin America. They cause all this death and destruction. And when they cause all this death and destruction in these countries, and people start coming to their country looking for a bit better life, they make sure, especially black people, don't get in, right? But we're not going to stop there. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Of course, I should say, if we look at the historical record, it becomes clear that blacks certainly didn't work to engineer their own demise in America. It was pretty much a construct based on second-class, third-class status that we had in society as the labor class, the free labor class, basically. You address that quite extensively in this book.
Yeah, we were always, see, we've operated off the base of a three-tiered structure. We had the elite class, or the aristocratic class, then we had the management class, which was made up of poor whites, and we had the working class, which was black folks. See, black folk were the working class, contrary to the popular myth up until about the civil rights movement. Blacks were the working class. Now...
1 second, y'all. Did I lose y'all? 1 second, let me just play this again.
After the civil rights movement and blacks became obsolete, now poor whites and some of the other whites are claiming that they are the working class in this country. But they were not. They were supposed to be the management class up until that point in time. Blacks were the labor class in the society.
It's interesting that you bring that up, but wouldn't it be fair to look through that tunnel of history and see that certainly poor whites have worked hard in this country and have had to come up through some of the same kinds of tyranny that blacks have experienced in America?
Oh, yes, they have. You will always have some poor whites because that's a class issue. That's not a race issue. See, if it had been a race issue, instead of a class issue, then why didn't you have poor whites out there picking cotton along with blacks? Why weren't they enslaved? Why didn't you have poor Indians? Why didn't you have poor Asians? Why didn't you have poor Hispanics out there in the field with black folk? It was a racial issue, not a class issue.
Now, this is a very important point because this issue is being dealt with right now through immigration. And we're going to touch upon this. Just remind me. But anyway, just to make a long story short, let me just show you the article. Okay, 1 second. Actually, you know what? I'll show you afterwards. Okay, let's keep watching.
You take a look at what's wrong, and certainly the book does cover a lot of what's wrong with Black America. Is it fair to say that at this time in our history, economically speaking, that blacks can, as we have been told to, pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps?
Yes, you can. With what you do have, you don't have very much of anything. The wealth and power, resources in this society have been frozen since 1790. It has not changed barely one iota. Okay, that's for instance. Let's go back to 1860. On the eve of the Civil War, 5% of the American population, the white population, controlled 24.6% of the wealth in the country. Now, after a Civil War, World War I, World War II, a Depression, Korean War, Vietnam War, and the Civil Rights Movement, it went up 1 point. Okay, so then it's 24 point something like 6. Okay, now at the same time, on the eve of the Civil War, black folk at that time had 1% of the wealth. Black folk now, after that same point in time, all those social turmoils and international upheavals, black folk now up to a little less than 1% still. That means we moved up less than 1/2 after all that turmoil in the world. So obviously the wealth is frozen in this society. Whites now control almost 100%, Daryl, of all the wealth, the income, the power, the resources, the privileges, the businesses, and all levels of government. Black folk do not have the sufficient wherewithal to be able to manage their lives and compete. Now, contrary when anybody tells you we cannot compete because we don't have it, it's not a question of that we are genetically inferior or inferior as human beings. It's that you do not have the appropriate tools and devices and controls and mechanisms to be able to compete with other groups.
But certainly we can look and see in this society where blacks have matriculated economically, educationally, politically, there's some advancement.
Oh yes, most definitely there's some, because there's always going to be an exception to the rule. I mean, I've heard people ask me on different shows, Dr. Anderson, if things are that bad for black folk, well, how do you explain Bill Cosby and Oprah and Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan? What does that mean? What it means is white racism is not perfect. That's what it means. You'll always have exceptional blacks for a number of reasons. First of all, you'll have some exceptional blacks simply because they defy and beat mathematical probabilities, point one. Point two, you will have some blacks who will survive and do extremely well simply because whites want to be able to demonstrate that the society is not totally shut out, against black folk, locked up against black folk. And thirdly, you will find there'll be some exceptional blacks who have been picked or chosen by some of the white power structures, say, this is my black, this is a special black. Now, in history, we had a special name for those individuals that I talked about in the book. Those what we call some ultra-conservative blacks who see things strictly through the eyes of white folk, and they've learned how to subordinate themselves and to try their best to protect and maintain the status quo, and for that they're rewarded by the white society.
He's talking about Candace Owens before Candace Owens was even born. Okay? We know black folk like this. They become the public mouthpieces in support of white supremacy and blackface. We're talking about your Candace Owens of the world, your Thomas Sowells. Even though I have to admit that Thomas Sowell, he makes some good points, but he himself is used to prop up the old Southern Confederate talking points. That's his job. That's who he's talking about. Okay, let's keep watching, y'all.
Well, they've matriculated through the educational system. They've moved up through the political system. They've survived social penury, and they've gone on to achieve something. Isn't that worth something?
Oh, most definitely. But see, unless it's tied back and networked back into the larger black body, it has very little impact on black folk.
Why do you think it is that blacks then do not tie their successes individualistically as they may be viewed back into the group?
Because black folk have bought into a lot of the basic premises in the Constitution, which says that to be successful, it must be based on what an individual can achieve in and of his own. That is not true. At the same time, black folk were being subjected as a group in this country when the Constitution was being drafted and implemented and approved. You had something like about 3 million black folk who were subjected to slavery. So, and see, whites have never as a group been enslaved in this nation. So they had a right to be able to go out and experiment and achieve, and as far as their God-given rights were given.
And
allow them to. But see, racism means race. It comes from the word group, and blacks are still perceived as a group in this country. We went into racism, we went into slavery as a group. We went into Jim Crowism as a group. We can only come out as a group, and individualism has no significance unless it's not tied back into trying to help that group come out of that deplorable condition.
This is what we tell you guys all the time. Individualism is a disease that is forced down the throats of black folk. And because we are so used to doing a few things that are kind of against our own self-preservation and self-interest, like practicing individualism, like not having long-term plans and goals, like investing in our own indoctrination through entertainment, these type of things. No other group does this. We saw recently that Kamala Harris invited, what's that guy that I think is Offset or something, the guy from Migos, to the White House. Why she do that? Because she's trying to appeal to the black vote. Why didn't she invite Jerry Seinfeld to the White House to appeal to the Jewish vote? Why did she do that? It's because black folk have essentially been so horrifically engineered that we meld our entertainment with our politics. And she's still playing those old, tired games. But anyways, let's keep watching, y'all.
Then, because we just don't have enough time to address everything that I would like you to address, if we take a look at a few points and just summarily talk about them. For instance, what's wrong with blacks politically in America, and why haven't we made more strides?
Because for a number of reasons. First of all, because we still tend to think that partisanship is important to black folk. But whites do not place as much importance on partisanship, political partisanship, as we do. See, when black folk did not belong to any party, and they were independent, they were enslaved. From 1618 up until 1866, blacks were slaves. They didn't belong to any party, and they got slavery out of it. From 1866 to 1936, about 96% of all the blacks in the United States belonged to the Republican Party. What they got was Jim Crowism out of it. From 1936 up to 1996, almost 97% of all the blacks in the United States belong to the Democratic Party. What they've gotten is benign neglect. So partisanship is not the issue. The issue is that black folk have never had an effective strategy for dealing with white racism in this country. That's the issue. And we have never sat down and say, how do we go about dealing with structural racism? If we are the only planned minority in the country, as I just indicated to you a few minutes ago that we were planned into it by a public policy, which says that the quote on black folk is zero. You're not going to have anybody going abroad, bringing black folk through refugee programs into the United States from Somalia or Ethiopia or from Haiti. You're not going to do it because they're fearful of blacks. There's a quote on blacks in this country.
I hope y'all are paying attention. Pay very good attention. Okay? Isn't that what's happening right now? Black people are being drowned in Europe. Black Africans being drowned in Europe, enslaved in Africa, in Libya and in Tunisia, okay, and being kicked out the borders in Canada and in the U.S. You can't make this crap up. This is exactly what's going on right now.
So we have never sat down and said, how do we win as a minority? You can win as a minority population if you learn and find out how it's been done in the past. Jews are a minority religious group, but they do win. The National Rifle Association is a minority social civic group, but they do win. The wealthy elite in this country is a minority group, but they do win. When will we sit down and strategize, how do we win as a minority?
And I guess perhaps the more operative word in that sentence might be, how do we win as a group?
That's right, as a minority group.
Now, do blacks have to act in concert then? Is what you're saying? Blacks have to act in concert if they are going to stave off becoming a permanent underclass?
That's right, because that's how you perceive. You must deal with the realities of life. You are perceived as a group, and you must act like a group. You must do everything in block. You must practice group economics. You must practice group politics. For instance, in politics, what I would tell blacks to do is just the opposite of what everyone else is telling them. Never divide yourself. Anything that divides you weakens you. You live in a society where the social premise is that the majority wins and the minority loses, okay? Now, never divide yourself along political lines. Stay as a block. If necessary, go independent. Do not split yourself up among the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and Independent Party. You're weaker now than you ever were. Vote as a block. Go out right now and register any and every black that can vote. Then pull yourself out of every party and hold yourself above both of the national parties and say, I don't care who runs for an office. We will deliver our vote as a block to whoever makes the greatest promise to black folk and deliver for us. That's who we'll vote for. And we will not tell you who we're going to vote for until the day of the election.
So you
see this right here. This is why I say that us as black people, and especially as black Muslims, let the immigrant community do what they're doing. Their interests are not our interests. Period. The only time they see us as allies is when we can do something for them. But now we have one of the fastest rising white supremacist demographics coming out of the Middle East and South Asia directly from Muslim countries. Directly from Muslim countries. And your social media influencers are adding fuel to that fire. Because they believe they only see their success not with the Quran and not with the Sunnah, not with the body of a body of scholars. They see success under the tutelage and the protection of white supremacists. So much so they're calling the white supremacists their allies, their brothers, and stuff like that. And the quicker that black Muslims, particularly black Muslims, wake up, the quicker that we can get something done as a group and as a body. Because at the end of the day, Islam is the actual solution. It's not our fault that these alleged Muslims have taken the religion of Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah, and bastardized it and made it something that it is not. That ain't got nothing to do with us. They have to answer to Allah for what they doing. And if they insist on building numbers based upon falsehood, that's between them and Allah. But us, we got to do our own thing. Those folks only see you as slaves. They don't see you as brothers or equals in anything. Are they not enslaving you in Libya right now? Are they not enslaving you in Lebanon, even though Lebanon bought out, depleted? In the Gulf countries, did they not just murder hundreds of black Ethiopians in Saudi Arabia? Hundreds in cold blood? Didn't they just do that? And which one of these Utopian diaries talked about that? But you find them talking about ridiculous things about how the Imam of the Haram said that it's the religious duty of Saudis to practice National Day. You see where their interests are? You see where their interests are? Don't let them trick and fool you talking about Islam is not about racism and all that kind of nonsense. We've been practicing Islam is not about racism since we became Muslim. They've been practicing hardcore racism. And when you start mentioning your interests, all of a sudden Islam is not about racism. All of a sudden. They out here defending hardcore white supremacists to your face. To your face. They out here defending folks like Daniel Hakikachu to your face. Running defense for people like this. Those are your brothers? Give me a break. Let's keep watching, yo.
You actually exercise some leverage.
That's right, and you demand respect. And at that point in time, they watch you and they give some credence to the effects of your vote. And more importantly, you should also create an independent party in this country for black folk, so that whenever if the Ross,
like Ross Perot,
if he runs
to Ross Perot, he's trying to do that.
Well, if Ross Perot runs, you're going to find a greatest move in this country to the independent parties. If a person runs for the Democratic Party, Republican Party, and Ross Perot runs, you got a three-way split. Run a black candidate in an independent party, and that way try to take the election with 26% of the vote. Demand respect from people. Whether or not you win or lose is not the point. Get your issues out there, support your own issues, and support your people as a group.
Educationally, where are we missing it then? If part of the problem is blacks not being able to have political power and certainly not being able to have economic power, then a part of that equation has something to do with what's happening to us educationally in this country. Where are we missing it, and where do blacks have to go to get it?
We're missing it educationally because we've never sat down and discussed the historical relationship between us and the educational system in this country. Remember, the educational system was designed on a public policy that's gone in a complete circle, 360 degrees. First of all, we were denied education. Then we moved from a denied educational basis to desegregated education prior to the Civil War. Then we moved after the Civil War into segregated education. Then by the 1950s, we went back to desegregated education, and now we're back into a state of denial of education. Then I'm going to talk about dismantling the school system, going to voucher systems, going to some kind of private school system. What that means, Daryl, is that black folk fail to understand that that schools are not change agents. They're only doing what the environment wants it to do. Schools in this country, starting in the 1860s, were designed to create a manual labor force for whites society, period. Black folk became obsolete in the mid-1960s. They no longer need us as a labor class. So therefore, the schools are dysfunctional because they no longer need black folk. If we really want to make our schools functional, we have to come up with a national public policy about what we want our schools to do for black folk.
Isn't that a slap in the face to all the black educators and administrators in big cities across this country who are in charge of school systems?
No, it's not, because because nobody's ever sat down with them and say where it is that black folk want to go. Suppose right now we want to, let's say if we had a national public policy on black folk, just as whites have always had a national public policy on us. They've had a policy on us, but we never had one for ourselves about what it is that we want to do as black folk. Suppose right now we want to go to the moon. Then once we decide where we want to go in a public policy, then it becomes incumbent upon all those educators and all those school systems to say, now what must our school systems do in terms of instilling in our kids the attitudes, the skills, the competencies to be able to get us to the moon? See, right now, the schools are not delivering because they don't know what we want them to do. So the schools are dysfunctional. And that's why in Detroit, Michigan, for instance, 57% of all the black kids that start the first grade in Detroit never graduate from high school. Where are the kids going to go? No one has ever told the schools what it is that you want them to do for black folk. The schools are still using the same books, the same curriculum that they've been using for 100 years in the system. And
this is another very important point, and that's why you see all of these hundreds of thousands of Muslims that run around marching with their picket signs talking about stop teaching our kids and LGBTs and stuff like that, and how black folk was looking at them funny. Like, what y'all just got here. You don't know what's happening here. And as a matter of fact, the ones who have been here for a minute, you didn't say nothing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. All of a sudden, when Zaddy say jump, you say how high? Now you want to protest? You don't know what's going on out here. They are very happy to support and prop up this white supremacist system. which again, like I said, black folk need to do their own thing. They need to opt out of the shenanigans of the white supremacist elites and those who are trying to twitch and twirl for them in thobes and abayas and beards and hijabs and stuff. And other than them. It don't make any sense. It don't make any type of sense whatsoever. How you get, can you imagine Muslims been here for so long, you can't get thousands of Muslims to come together for dawah, or thousands of Muslims to come together to, try to clean up the hood, or thousands of Muslims to come and, do anything. But you can definitely get the thousands of Muslims to come together against the LGBTs if white folks say they're allowed to do it. If white folks say it's okay, they'll do it. That's their agenda. That ain't got nothing to do with us. Let them do what they do. Let me show y'all something. Like, subscribe, share, hit me up on Patreon. Let me show y'all something. 1 second, y'all. Let me just skip this thing here. This is from Political. This is why I'm showing y'all this video right now. The Homestead Act gave hundreds and thousands of acres of land to white Europeans so they can have the American dream. And the purpose of that Homestead Act was to make sure that demographically, white folks would outnumber black folks. Because remember, the issue of white and black is a totally made up social construct. And it came out of Europe. They're the ones who made it up. We didn't make it up. They made it up. So since they make it up, they make the rules. Folks that were never considered white before are now all of a sudden considered white. You had Italians considered white. You had, Irish considered white. Polish considered white. All these folks who were never considered white before, because white was only like the French, the English, and the Spanish, and I think German, as well, right? These were the white folks. Everybody else wasn't white. Now they included all these Europeans that become white. So now they come over to the West and whatnot, and they completely become the dominant society in the West. That's how they outpopulated the Native Indians, and that's how they outpopulated the black population from that. And up until this very day, you have South Asians and Arabs and people all over the earth that think that somehow these white folks are the natives of the West. They are the true Americans. You can't be American unless you're white. If you're black, you're some sort of African or something like that. You're not American. If you're Canadian, you have to be white. Not knowing the history of how the demographics changed and switch. The diabolical, devilish history. So that's how they swapped out whiteness for blackness, whiteness for the indigenous. That's how they did it. Now, the Democratic Party's in big trouble because the call to reparations is loud. And black folk are opting out of voting Democrat by the millions. They're opting out. They're tired of the Democratic Party. They're tired. So just like they invited a whole bunch of people from Europe for a demographic shift, is just like the Biden administration is inviting, as you can see here, status and work for thousands of Venezuelans. You know how many thousands? They just said thousands, but you know what they mean by thousands? You think they mean 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000? You know how much they mean? 500,000. 500,000 of brand new immigrants from Venezuela. For what? To vote who? Democrat. This is the real great replacement theory, okay? These folks are supposed to replace black people. Now, black people, you have to know where you stand. You know very well in the States, they're not letting any black immigrants into the country, okay? They're shipping them back to Africa, shipping them back to Haiti. Even they are forcing hysterectomies on African women by force in America and sending them back so they can't have babies in Africa. By force. You know this very well. We covered that on this channel here. You are not stopping immigrants from coming in this country. These immigrants have no clue what the play is. But you know, because this is not the first time this happened. You can't even say it's the second time this happened. It's happened how many times before? But now they're getting prepared to lock you out permanently from participating in their system. If you know this is happening, you know this is going on, then either you are prepared to be a permanent underclass under the thumb of white folks, or you're prepared to put in some work against these demons. And as we said it before, we're going to say it again, right? Our success is not going to happen without the help of Allah. That ain't happening. Though, if we're going to succeed, it has to be under the help and the guidance of Allah directly. Which is why Muslims, particularly Salafis, got to take this very, very, very seriously. All this dogmatic crap that we've been involved in for the last 30 years, that need to stop. Like, why are you spending hours on social media arguing with other people on social media when you see the tidal wave, which is called immigration, literally coming to replace you? You think these 500,000 Venezuelans are going to Utah somewhere? No, they're coming directly to your neighborhoods. They are here to replace you specifically. And this is what the left-right paradigm is all about. How do you have two liberal leaders of the world, liberals who pride themselves telling black folk about equal rights and all this kind of nonsense, right? But they can come together, and they liberal, mind you, and they can come together to make sure that no more black people come in Canada or America. These folks, that's why we don't play that left-right paradigm stuff. That left-right paradigm stuff is devilish. It's demonic. Let's watch this, y'all.
My concern is civil rights for black folk. So I told him I could not attend such a meeting, but I didn't mind simply because of my commitment to black people to writing up a position paper, an information paper that would go through and explain it to them. That's why in the letter that you just referenced, for instance, in space, I articulated some areas where blacks are disadvantaged. In space, see, black folk with only two major populations in this country, as an example, Dr. Watkins. And see, and black folk were filling up that space. Black folk constitute almost 51 to 55% of the population of the United States, up until before the Civil War. They were they dominated 5 or 6 southern states. Black folk were the major populations in South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. They were the dominant population, almost 55%. They made it up. When they started bringing in all these immigrants came to this country and started displacing Black folk in space, where space and land that Black folk should have had. They didn't get it. But immigrants came to this country. Every immigrant got 650 acres of land when they got here. They got 150 acres for every slave they owned. They took up almost 2 billion acres of land and that Black folk never got. They started displacing Blacks in space. The same thing has been occurring in the 50s. For instance, in Florida, the Cubans came in. Cubans now dominate Miami. They own and control Miami. They also took in Miami, where you had Black cities and space in Miami and Florida, that immigrants took over Overtown. They took over Liberty City. They took over Richmond Heights. They took over Coconut Grove, displaced Blacks on all those respects. I go to California. Immigrants took over California from Black folk. They took over Liberty. They took over Inglewood. They took over Compton. They took over Watts. They took over Central City. Now they're gentrifying all over America, displacing Blacks in space. All the major cities in the United States that used to be Black dominated, major urban areas, are going to be subjected to gentrification. They're going to be Blacks going to be kicked out of space all over this country. So that's just about space. They displace Blacks in employment, where in this country, where Blacks used to be the dominant population in everything, in all these major jobs, everything from barbershops to mining to labor classes, they displaced Blacks out of all those jobs, and they brought in immigrants, and immigrants displaced Blacks. I don't want to get into all the particulars of it, but just like also in economics.
Now, those of y'all who are living in the States today, he said this, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he said this. What's going on in New York right now with immigration? Somebody put in the chat. What's happening in New York right now, in the Black neighborhoods in New York right now? In the Black neighborhoods in eastern, the eastern U.S. What's happening right now? He said this years ago. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, let me share it with y'all. 1 second, y'all. This is why the immigrant Muslim has really had no invested interest in helping Black people because of this stuff. They benefit off of your demise. It's not, rhetoric or shock or anything like that. This is the actual truth. Anybody who lived in a Black neighborhood for a long time knows what happens when the South Asians and the Arabs come into your community. They open up shop. They start selling you pork, malt liquor, loose cigarettes, while hiding the Qurans behind the counters. Their American dream is based upon your Black nightmare. And the quicker you realize that is the quicker you can rectify the situation. Those people who are telling you, oh, we're all brothers and no racism in Islam and all kind of nonsense and all that kind of crap, right? These are the treacherous ones because they shouldn't be telling you that. Wagging their fingers in your face, telling you, Black people, that. Which races and Black people have any history of practicing? Are Black people going into South Asian neighborhoods, opening a shop and locking the South Asians out of their businesses? Are they doing that? They're going to the Arab neighborhoods and doing that? Selling Arabs pork and loose cigarettes and all that kind of stuff and sending their kids to college off of the destruction of their communities? While hiding the Qurans behind... Black people doing this? Don't let these people trick you and fool you. Okay, we already showed y'all this one. 1 second here. Right? This is what's going on right now. This right here, okay? The southern states are sending their immigrants to the northern states. And remember, we told y'all that this left-right paradigm is meant to prop up and hold up the system of white supremacy. You know, what looks like internal fighting, in my opinion, it's not. They've learned their lessons from the Civil War, and they are trying to elicit a certain very predictable outcome by this pretend fight. And that's why a liberal president like Joe Biden can continue with Donald Trump policies on immigration. They're supposed to be, you know, at odds with each other, correct? That's what they're supposed to be doing. Does it look like they are at odds with each other? They don't want specific immigrants coming to the country. This is what's going on right now. And that's why if you do not have any self-respect, then nobody respects you. When you speak with a voice of capitulation and all this kind of integration nonsense and all kind of crap, right? Those folks ain't integrating. Are they integrating? No. They're working together as units. You black people are the only ones on earth talking about some integration. Only you. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Let me give you the statistics so you can tell our people to remember this. In economics, for every 10% increase in the number of immigrants entering this nation, the annual income of Black Americans will be reduced by 0.3%. As an example, in the 1950s, Blacks had an earning ratio of 56 cents for every $1 earned by a white. Now, as a result of this Black civil rights movement, Black earning ratio went up from 56% up to 66 cents in the white collar jobs. However, between 1970 and 1990, when this country came up with the new immigration policies because of the civil rights laws, that the number of immigrants, Asian, Arabs, and Hispanics went up over 300%. And guess what that did? That 300% increase in the number of Hispanics, Asian, and Arabs came into America, reduced Blacks from 66% back down to 56%.
Who are these Arabs and South Asians that he's talking about, y'all? Somebody put in the chat, please. Who are these Arabs and South Asians that he's talking about? Let me rewind that 1 second, y'all. Let me bring that back in case you missed it. Somebody put in the chat.
Result of this Black civil rights movement, Black earning ratio went up from 56% up to 66 cents in the white collar jobs. However, between 1970 and 1990, when this country came up with the new immigration policies because of the civil rights laws, that the number of immigrants, Asian, Arabs, and Hispanics went up over 300%. And guess what that did? That 300% increase in the number of Hispanics, Asian, and Arabs came into America, reduced Blacks from 66% back down to 56%, which means Black folk lost the 10% they made in doing the civil rights movement. They are back to where they were before the civil rights movement ever began.
Sister Tika, you got it right. It's the Muslims. Just because you have a Muslim name and you come from a Muslim country doesn't mean that you are not practicing full-blown racism. Full-blown racism. Don't let these folks confuse you. And then when a Black person says something about it, they want to label you as racist. Very typical white supremacist strategies anyway. Like gaslighting is right out of a white supremacist playbook. when a black person complains about his back being broken by the whips of slavery, a white person can very quickly play the victim. Well, why did you get my whip so bloody? You didn't have to get my whip so bloody when I was breaking your back with the whip. Like, come on. Now I have to clean this whip. Outrageous gaslighting. It is so insane that these very same Muslims will exonerate the people that made their parents refugees to begin with, just to hate on you. Folks who never done anything to them. As a matter of fact, showed them unconditional love, unconditional brotherhood. Unconditional, you showed that to them. So that they can come over here and tell you that your history is Marxism. And stop blaming the white man and all kind of craziness. Talking crazy. Just talking crazy. Well, I did it. I got a hit. White man didn't stop me. Just talking crazy to you. They're very eager and happy to benefit off of the programs meant for black people. They're very happy to benefit off of, affirmative action programs and minority, all these programs meant for black people to begin with. Scholarships. How many South Asians took scholarships that were meant for black people? How many? Even this Vivek Ramaswamy, the guy running for president, the Indian guy he went to university on, you guessed it, affirmative action benefits. And he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars during it. He didn't need it. He didn't need it. So this is what they doing. And as much as they do, as all this stuff that they doing, right? There is a lot to be said about black folk who are still defending this stuff after all these centuries. Let's keep watching, y'all. Let's finish this out.
And so that's why even when Obama was office, he came into office, and he tried to do some things in terms of employment. Almost 48 to 50% of all the jobs that occurred while Obama was a president of the United States went to Hispanics. And even they keep telling you the lies about what black unemployment is only double whites. That's a lie. The black unemployment rate at that time was 35% national for black folk. You got a structural unemployment rate for blacks in this country. What they keep using as a tool to gauge unemployment is only two things: people who are filing for unemployment benefits and those who are actively looking for jobs. Black folk have a historical structural unemployment rate, which means so many millions of black folk just gave up, surrendered from never getting a damn job, or being fired from a job, or being underemployed. And so consequently, they replace blacks in jobs. They also replace black folk in the social consciousness of this country. Nobody talks about blacks anymore. They talk only about Arabs, Asian, Hispanics.
He said it, not me. He said it, not me. And so it's very easy to include yourself in the victim Olympics now while claiming black folk are always crying victimhood. Oh, why are you black people always crying victimhood? Meanwhile, all over the internet talking about Islamophobia and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep watching.
And I'm going to stop there. But even the affirmative action program I wrote in 1970, the 1970 affirmative action plan I wrote, which was the second affirmative action plan in the entire United States. I didn't write that affirmative action plan for minorities and poor folk and people of color, Arabs, Asian, Hispanics, and handicapped and poor people. I wrote it for black folk. But guess what? As a result of it, that almost 80% of all the resources going through the affirmative action program went to Hispanics and Arabs. That in the 8A set-aside program, that's almost 100% Asians. And in the typical affirmative action program across America, white women pick up 78% of all the contracts for services and goods, like in Texas, and the Hispanics get about 27%, and blacks get 9/10 of one. And I'll stop there.
Wow. Dr. Anderson, I mean, that's powerful. And I want everybody to pay attention, hear what he's saying. What he's saying is that you have been, some would argue that that you as black people have been convinced to vote against your own interests, basically. You've been convinced that illegal immigration or legal immigration, whichever kind of immigration, that benefits you, that this is part of some broad coalition that, we're all going to be this big group and we're all going to work together and everybody's going to win. And you're kind of being bamboozled. You know what it reminds me of, Dr. Anderson? I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to Sunday school, and at Sunday school they would have these contests, based on who could memorize verses from the Bible. And I was, I guess, pretty good at memorizing the different books of the Bible and verses and everything. So I'd memorized the more verses than anybody else. So they were going to let me. They were going to let the winner of the competition, which was me at the time. I was real proud and happy. I was about 9 years old. The winner would get to put his hand in a big jar full of pennies and grab as many pennies as you could get, right? And that was my, so I was excited. I'm getting ready. I'm flexing my hand, trying to see if I can grab as many pennies as possible. And I was on the bus with this boy. I never forget, his name was Warren, and he was about 3 years older than me. He's about 12. And which, when you're 9 years old, that's like a giant, and I thought Warren was my friend. I thought Warren, I looked up to him. I thought he was like my mentor and everything else. And I didn't know Warren was actually playing me. So Warren said to me, he said, boy, so he said, look, my hands are much bigger than yours. And he said, so why don't you let me grab the pennies for you? And then we'll just, we'll just share the money, because I can grab more pennies because I got a bigger hand. Right. Well, what Warren did was Warren went in there, and I agreed to it. I said, OK, that sounds good. Great idea. That's all right. Great. So he goes in there and he grabs all the pennies and he puts all the pennies in his pocket. And I'm showing up saying, hey, where's my pennies? Where's my cut? We did good, didn't we? Like that. And Warren wasn't even talking to me. Now, at that point, I can't find Warren because Warren done ran off with my money. And that makes me think about what the Democratic Party and what these other folks do to black people. They say, hey, come along, black people, we need your vote. Come on, rock the vote. Your ancestors died for you to vote. Put us in power. And then when we get the power, we're going to share it with everybody. We're going to make sure that we take good care of you and everything else. So we show up, being good slaves that we are, and we give them all the power. And we end up looking deflated and as depressed as I was when I let Warren go grab the pennies that really belong.
Family, we put out a video right before Joe Biden became president of the United States, of Kamala Harris, basically saying, but I'm not going to do anything specific for black folk. No. Right? Y'all remember that? We put that out there, right? It's amazing. Muslims the same way. Muslims, they kind of bought into this white supremacy thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, come and have this bazaar for Palestinians, and come have this bazaar for the Rohingya, and the bazaar for the Uyghurs, and all these causes, right? All good causes, mind you. They're good causes. Okay, they are good causes. I personally donated to some of these causes myself. But let somebody say, let us have a bazaar for O Block. Let's say that. Let us say, let's have a bazaar for Muslims in Philly, and see the support you're going to get for that. Let's have a bazaar for the enslaved Muslims in Libya. Let's get them out of there. Let's have some counseling for them. Let's build them some homes, all the kind of stuff. It don't even be cost a few $100 to do all of that. But let's do that. And watch how quick they switch up on you. They will switch up real quick. Don't let them pretend like our interests and their interests are the same. They're not. They do not see you as part of the wider Muslim society. They really don't. They're out here working with real white supremacists now, like real ones. Okay? You got your Muhammad Hijabs working with Daniel Hakikuchu, working with Abdullah Andalusi, working with Eddie from Rhodesia. They all coming together. They all coming together. Brother Abdullah, turn off your YouTube, please. Mm-hmm. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Brother Abdullah.
Walaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Wallahi,
What you got?
tonight I'm speechless. I don't even know where to begin. Should I play the devil's advocate?
Go ahead, man. Let's see what you got to say. Go ahead.
Well, that brother that you brought and this Dr. Anderson, man, I need to research the man. I wish I had 1% of their brain.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been doing
Seriously.
this for a long time. He's a big deal. He's a very big deal in American politics in general.
And the
He's
thing is,
Go ahead.
we don't know. I'm just meeting him tonight as well, God.
Mm-mm.
Do you see how, like, we are in the dark?
Yeah,
We are really in the dark.
yeah.
But one question I wanted to ask you tonight is,
Mhm.
and I hope you don't get mad at me with this. I know I'm ignoring with this question a lot of history behind,
Mm.
but it's some of the question is that the average layman or the average immigrant comes into his mind.
Mm.
Are the black community a real community? Black people in the northern hemisphere, are they community?
What you see, right? It's happening in America and
Yeah.
Canada and whatnot, and in the West in general, right? In Britain, right? The black folks in these areas just happen to be
Hmm.
in the best situation in terms of the global black populace on Earth,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
And however, at the same time, part of the strategy for these black folk is that they don't operate as a community. You
Exactly.
understand?
Yep.
They're socially engineered to not operate as a community. If you know about slavery, what used to happen in the times of slavery is that black people in general were property. They did not have autonomy over their bodies themselves or the
Exactly.
bodies of their children. So
Yep.
slave masters would sell the children of their female slaves and breed the slaves like animals so they can get bigger slaves. So they'll get the biggest male slave and the biggest female slave and just breed them. And the more babies that woman had, the more profitable she was, right? So if you have a human animal, right?
Yes.
Can he think on a communal level?
No. No way.
No. This
No
is
way.
a social experiment. This has never been done before in history, right? So now, fast forward to the civil rights era, and the whole point behind the civil rights era, because remember, it didn't start off as a civil rights thing. It got steered into that direction. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
It was a human rights thing, and then it got steered into a civil rights thing. where
Exactly.
they started talking about integration and all this kind of social integration, right? So because black people never had their own leaders, their own
Anything, and their own
anything,
anything.
and own anything, right? Their entire existence was essentially under the thumb of this hostile element of white society. Now white society is telling them, right? But their black leaders are saying it, but they don't know, the black leaders who are saying it, the populace doesn't know that it's the plot from the enemy, right? It's
Yep.
the plot from the enemy. Well, why don't you socially integrate, right? Because now the idea of integration is that if you black folks go to the white schools, get to go to the
Mhm.
white schools, then
Mhm.
you're going to get a better education. That was the idea.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're trying to convince these black people, okay, go to the schools of your enemy, right? So,
Yes.
so you can get a better education. And what ended up happening? What ended up happening was the enemy sent the best black teachers to the white schools and the worst
Yep.
white teachers to the
For the
black
black
schools,
students. In the
right?
name of integration.
In the name of integration. They made sure to tax these black neighborhoods, right? Send that tax money to fund white schools while sending the cast off old raggedy textbooks to the black schools, which is actually still practiced up until this very day. That
You know
same.
what? That reminds me. I was watching one night this program called Nightline with Ted Koppel.
Mm,
He had a black father
mm,
who was his argument was he had a son that went to a high school in Washington D.C.
mm,
The son graduated from high school with a 4.0 GPA. Check this
mm,
out. This is a dad who told his sons, his kids, you cannot play no sports, no basketball, no nothing.
mm,
And then at the same time, he sent them to his neighborhood high school,
mm,
which he was obligated to go to, and graduated with a 4.0 GPA.
mm,
The son got an internship at Harvard in the summertime. Check this
mm,
out. He went to the internship, and the kids were doing calculus 3, physics 3, chemistry 3.
mm,
And this brother just stand up and say, like, what are you guys talking about?
mm,
And they said, you are in Harvard, man. You never heard about this? He said,
mm,
I never took none of these courses you guys talking about.
mm,
And that's why they were on Nightline talking about an American kid who graduated from an American high school with a 4.0 GPA,
mm,
that in his high school they never even taught algebra.
mm,
The high school curriculum didn't even have a algebra. And the father was like, I wish he had went to play basketball, my son. Because yeah, right now
mm,
today he would have been something. He said he's a big
mm,
guy, he's like 6'8", and
mm,
told him not to, and this is what I got at the end of the day.
mm. Well, was he a black guy?
Yeah, he was a black African American guy, was
Yeah.
born in Washington D.C., grew up in D.C., went to high school, and you
Mm,
can see how systematically that
mm.
school didn't even have a curriculum that passed even algebra.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And up to
And
this day, I never forget about that story. I'm like, are you really serious? And
that's
then
that's that's what social integration has done. Because what social integration is, right? Black people have been convinced that if you just integrate white society, you'll have what white people have. Not knowing it's a massive game. It's a game.
massive lie,
It's a lie.
another trickery.
Yes, trick. It's a massive trick. It's a
Yeah.
big trick, right? You have millions of people who have never had a chance to work cohesively together. Every time they tried, here comes the government to break up all of our organizations by violence, by fraud, by
Yep. By saying like
arbitrary arrest.
by saying they are like another racist or like separatist,
Yeah,
and they are this and they are that
yeah. But
in the name of like they are terrorists.
yes, we're talking about some very aggressive and diabolical organization. You're talking about the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, right?
Yep.
Who broke up the African
Black
National,
Panthers. Yep.
the Black Panthers, right? Marcus Garvey, the Nation of Islam. He orchestrated the assassination of Malcolm X, and he tried to get Martin Luther King to kill himself. These are the people we're talking about here.
Yep.
These people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Subhanallah.
And then, now, mind you, I told you about this thing with integrated schools, right? And
Yeah.
socially integrated schools. Okay. Now, you have the Muslims who just got here. Y'all just got here. Okay.
And I want to get to that point too. I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna talk to you from an immigrant point of view right now, right?
Yeah.
I'm in Somalia. I'm watching the glamour and the glitter of the USA. I don't even know anything about ghettos or how black people, what the class system and everything. All I'm thinking about, I need to go to USA or Canada because my life is gonna be on the clouds and I'm gonna be in heaven, right? We got here, and most of us, to be honest with you, we got thrown within the black community.
Yes, of course.
It's not like we came with.
That is the purpose of you. Get it?
Exactly.
Now you get to see how the social engineering experiment how it works in real life.
You know what? The very social engineering they did was bring Puerto Ricans here, and they failed. Puerto Ricans and black community intermingled, and they marry within each other. Their mentality was, if you put these two poor people together, they're gonna fight with each other for resources and for everything. You see my point? And they failed that. So now it's like we can bring some others that have no clue or what the call is about and bring them here, right? So from an immigrant point of view, I get here and I'm like, thank God. I got what I was dreaming of, right? Let me make myself somebody. And now we got thrown into here, and there is fights, there is gunshots, and I can count for you the number of Somali cab drivers that has been killed by African Americans. And sometimes you wonder, you go like, listen, I give right to the white people, they don't kill us. Why are these brothers killing us? Not knowing the whole reason that you were brought in there was like for you guys to
do that very thing.
To do this to each other. Do this to each other and never got out of it. And now you have black community looking at you as an enemy and you looking at them like, I'm supposed to be your brother. Why are you killing me? You killed yesterday my cousin. How the hell am I gonna come to your neighborhood? You see my point?
Yep.
And then it's really, when we talk about immigrants, we have to separate the immigrants themselves, the South Americans and the Arabs and the Africans. I would say the Southeast Asians are the ones that are wholeheartedly all about their life, all about me, just me, myself, and I. If you want to look at it that way, like you described earlier, it's like they don't care about black people or anybody else. It's like, how can I attain worldly life in here?
Well, there's the history behind South Asians in the West. There's a whole thing, and most South Asians, they themselves don't know it, but we know it because we're from
it's
here.
Brain drain, number one.
South Asians have been here for almost 200 to 300 years, right?
Yeah.
You know that, right? They were brought by British, and mostly British, some French, right, to the West Indies, the Caribbean,
exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Because to do what? To make sure that they were the overseers of the black slaves in this region, right?
That was working,
and they were allowed to keep their religions, right? So they weren't brought the same way that black people were brought, right? Black people were forced into Christianity, right?
Exactly. Yep.
But the South Asians were allowed to keep Hinduism and they were allowed to keep Islam in the West Indies. Right?
Exactly.
Why was that? You know why that was?
Yep. Tell me.
Because they were very happy to work for white people and making sure that they were overseers of black people.
Without a doubt.
They
Without a doubt.
were not resistant to it.
Yep.
They were happy to do it, to do that job, right? And they were very glad that white people were given that opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Forward
Yes,
to
yes, sir.
2023. Fast forward to 2023. Okay, and what do we see? This is very same. South
Exactly.
Asian
I'm happy.
community doing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whatever you say
The
after you.
same thing. Even white people wrote this in their literature, how submissive
Subservient, yep. Submissive, subservient they are, yep.
They're writing this stuff in their books, in their literature, that the South Asian is, they'll do whatever you want, blah, 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 right? And it's the same thing today. It's the very same thing, right? So now when you look at Somalis, right? Somalis are immigrants too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But is your situation the same as the Arab?
No.
Is it the same as the South Asian?
No.
No. But it's the same as who?
Everybody else.
Who's everybody else? Who are the Somalis closest to?
Oh, Africans, black Americans, or minority, if you want to put it quote unquote.
Exactly. That's why you guys are here. And it's not just here. It's impossible because, for example, could you have a Rhoda Usman in Somalia? Would that exist?
Oh, hell no.
What does that tell you? What did that tell you? This is a social engineering experiment, and it's a copy-paste system that is copy and pasted in Canada, America. Is it Switzerland? You guys are in Switzerland too, right?
Yeah, all over Europe. Yeah, they have it. Yeah.
It's the same thing. You guys are doing the same thing everywhere in the Western countries that you would never ever even think of doing in Somalia.
No way.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? You know what I mean? And that's what we've been telling y'all, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
It's really, 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 like the brother said, that author that you had it before, Dr. Anderson, the author you had, I swear to God, hit the nail on the head. He said, we need to organize as black people into a third political party, and we will need to have one bucket vote that we're going to say, whoever is helping us, not like you always say, not Democrat, not Republican, not they're going to elect a black person to be a president like Obama, and you drink the wine and then you get dizzy, you go like, just put the first black person in there. Like like one comedian said, he said, they ask me, he said, white people asking me if I'm going to vote for his ideas, whatnot. He said, at this point, I really don't care. I just need one black person in there. Just put the first black person.
any black person, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then he said, later on, we talk about ideas and everything else.
Yeah. And this is, how the enemy, how they strategize, because they've been doing this stuff for a long, long, long time, right? They can put a white supremacist in blackface to convince you that they're on your side, right? So over here on the Feachaz, we've been telling the Muslims for how long now that you can't play in this left-right paradigm. That it's not going to work.
You know what? I wouldn't mind if a Catholic South American person, that's what we're doing right now, I wouldn't mind. But it's like we as Muslims, on top of everything else, we have, like you said, a religion that protects us. And instead of us going back to Allah and realizing we can't do anything without His help.
Exactly.
So let's correct ourselves up. Instead of thinking that mentality, we go like, no, mister. Oh, we don't want no LGBT. Let's go march together.
Yeah, that's what the most ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm like, your problem is LGBT is the highest level. This is not your problem. Your problem is like you don't even have messages to pray on. Why are you worried about the LGBT which existed? Allah told us in the Quran, there is a whole prophet that was raised for them. And these people are going to exist until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Whether you like it or not, whether maybe not in our countries, but in this so-called quote unquote democratic, and you know what? It's actually coming up to them, catching up to them.
Yeah.
Even the West is catching up to them. They're understanding this thing. If they do this, their existence is gonna be over. They know that, most of them. They know that. If you put all the women here and all the men here, and you say, men, you intermarry themselves, and women intermarry themselves, these are not stupid people. They know their livelihood and existence is going to be over in less than few years.
And mind you, that whole push for homosexuality, it started in the late 1800s, right, by the eugenics movement, right?
Exactly.
And
With that lady who said, like,
Margaret
no,
Sanger and
Margaret Sanger,
these folks, right? So they were, that back in those days was called homosexuality or whatnot, and and she actually openly said that nobody should have children, but who is she? She's part of eugenics movement. So who is she talking about? She's talking about black folk.
Black people, they shouldn't have no kids, and they don't deserve to be here, and they don't deserve to be on the same planet as me. That was her mentality.
Yeah, she said like the worst thing that you can do to the earth is have kids and all kind of craziness, right? She said all this stuff, right? Way back then, right?
Yeah. To be honest with you, the nucleus of us is like the brother said. I can never forget this point. We have to come together. We have to organize. We have to come together and just have just like they say, me, myself, and I, we, ourselves, and us. That's it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I swear to God, as I was listening to that man, the author, I was like, all I could think was like, he's gonna be the next Malcolm X. They're gonna take him out anytime soon. I swear to God, I'm like, the way he was breaking it down, I'm like, he's touching some nerve somewhere over there that I don't know, and he's gonna be on the scope. And I'm like, it won't be too long, and like they take him out and they say like oh, black people, they don't like each other, they're killing each other out.
Yeah,
I put the blame on us.
He's worked with presidents. I believe he worked with Lyndon Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. He worked with Carter. He's
Mr. Anderson, right?
Yeah, Dr. Claude Anderson. Yeah, he worked.
I'm talking about the one before him, the author.
Yeah,
that was the brother was interviewing.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Wow, he was young at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's both Dr. Claude Anderson. Yeah.
Wow.
That's how long he's been saying this for.
Oh my God.
He's been
what
saying
a
this
beautiful
for a
work, man.
long time. Yeah.
I wish we had listened. Like I said, we are in the dark. I am just coming to get to know him. I read Langston Hughes and James Baldwin and everybody else I read. I'm like, where is this guy? This is 21st century.
Yeah. So he's been saying this for many years, right? So
I remember
people like that will never get promoted. It's just like Malcolm X. Malcolm X didn't get promoted at all.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't even see a street called Malcolm X.
Yeah.
To the point you don't. Well, I swear, I was like, you know what? One day I sat down. I was like, I know Malcolm X. I listen to his tapes. I really like him. But why I don't see him in the media? Why these people don't like him? You know what? Malcolm X was real African. He told black people, if they put you on one finger, put them on 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And they don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like that. Yeah. Honestly speaking, and I'm not scared about anybody else. They don't like that. If you tell them,
when we were going to school, like when we were growing up in school, like I went through the entire school system here, right? So we saw the evolution of what we now know as Black History Month, right? Do you know it was never a month? It never started as a month. You know what it was in the beginning?
No.
It was Martin Luther King Day. It
started which they don't even allow that anymore.
Yes, it was started as Martin Luther King Day, right? And then it went from Martin Luther King Day, and then they went to Black History Week, right?
Oh my God!
Went from Black History Week to eventually Black History Month, which happened when I think Black History Month happened in my last year of high school, right?
Okay.
So, but anyways.
And they gave us, like the comedian said, they gave us the shortest month of the year.
Yeah, the shortest month. Yeah, exactly. Right. So in Martin Luther, like in these times, right, Black history was Martin Luther King, everything Martin Luther King. And then when you talked about Malcolm X was violent.
Yeah.
That's all they taught you.
To be honest with you, me
Yeah.
in my conclusion, what I
Mm.
found out was when Malcolm X actually talks to them as a real man.
Yeah,
If you put
exactly.
me on one finger, I'm gonna put you 5 fingers back.
Yeah.
That means me and
But
you equal.
you know how we found out the truth about Malcolm X? It's a true story. Because
Uh,
we were indoctrinated to think that Malcolm X was about violence and we should follow Martin Luther King, and the enemy, they love to push this non-violent stuff. Like that's the enemy will tell you, if you're going to protest peacefully,
I
because
swear,
that's the enemy's tactics, right?
I swear to God, my
Yeah,
conclusion I reached it was
yeah,
Martin Luther King told these people, if you hit me on this cheek, I'm gonna
mm,
give you the other one.
yeah.
That was his philosophy. And I
Yeah,
said, this guy
so
was
of
like,
course
no,
this appeals to the enemy. Of course they're gonna love that, because then they can get away with all the junk they're doing with impunity without expecting repercussions, right? So,
exactly.
but you know how we found out about the real Malcolm X
Uh-huh.
and how we learned to love him? You know how we found out?
Yeah.
We found out from the Malcolm X movies.
Oh yeah,
Spike Lee did a movie, and then it went
which wasn't
viral.
that far. Which wasn't that far.
Yeah. He did a movie, and the movie itself went viral. Okay,
Without
right.
a doubt,
So
yeah.
yeah, it was viral before the movie even came out.
Exactly.
It was like almost I would say like many months of just advertising with the X hats and the X shirts, and
Exactly. Yep.
it was just all over. Everybody's wearing this X, and then we started reading about Malcolm X, and then we read the autobiography of Malcolm X, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Right. So that's how we found out about the real Malcolm X, right? From the movie. Okay.
And one thing I really like, always it still amazes me, and I think about is like how they were able to traject, like the killing of Malcolm X was like because he converted to Islam Sunni, and he rejected Nation of Islam. Now Nation of Islam had killed him.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things about the movie that was a little bit controversial in the black community itself.
Exactly.
Right?
Me too. I was like, no, why you doing it to
Yeah,
that?
because in this time we were like that in the 90s was very conscious for blackness, right? It was very conscious. Late
Exactly.
80s, early 90s, and the culture was very uplifting back in those days. So we had a lot of hip hop artists like Public Enemy and X Clan and Boogie Down Production. These were very popular rap artists,
Exactly. They used to rap about social
yeah,
issues, about social
exactly,
issues. Yep. And there was
exactly.
only Def Comedy Jam as well too that came
Yeah,
out at that time.
yeah, right. So, but anyway, you know, like that part was, but it's a movie at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Yep.
It's a movie at the end of the day, and
It's like art imitating life, art
yeah,
imitating real life.
yeah, exactly,
It's just an imitation, yeah. And you don't
yeah,
expect all the real things to be in there. You
mm,
always expect your mind to be stolen and drifted away somewhere else
yeah.
into different
But
lands. Yeah.
Malcolm X at his time, right,
Yeah.
never had the popularity of Martin Luther King. Like never, not even close,
With
right?
oh,
Even after his time, he didn't have the. He only achieved that popularity really from the 90s beyond, and now he's very very popular, right? He's
not
very.
only is he very popular, I can tell you right now, I swear to God, most of the immigrants that you're talking about,
Mm,
especially the Muslim immigrants, if you ask them about Malcolm X, they might tell you the movie,
mm,
the X
mm,
hat, and
mm,
the X jacket
mm.
to that superficial level, and that's it.
Yeah. Mm,
And
mm.
I'm like, yeah, you don't even really know the history of this country, the
Yeah.
history of these people. You don't
Yeah.
even know who came out from them. You
Yep.
just drink the Kool-Aid as it is, and
Yep.
that's it.
And just go wherever the wind blows you, right? And
Exactly. Without
you are the next social experiment. And we told y'all when it all goes to crap, don't come to us, run into us, because we told y'all, right?
yep.
Black folks have been looking to y'all as brothers and family and all this kind of stuff, but you went to go fraternize and frolic with the enemy, so you made your bed, you got to sleep in it.
No,
Y'all,
but
y'all.
also you have to look. Lately, I've been studying. I was like,
Mm,
you know what? As many African American scholars we have, At least why, from this point of view, not from the Islamic point of view, why we don't have our own, like, what do they call it? Like, mu'tamarat, all these things. And instead of waiting for them to have a mu'tamar in DC or Baltimore or Philadelphia and expecting them to invite us and say like, Sheikh Wyatt, come. Sheikh,
This is starting to happen now. It's for the first time actually, right?
it's never too late. It's never too late.
It's actually starting to happen, but not on a huge level yet. It's just starting on a grassroots level. But we're starting to see this more and more and more, that more Black imams are coming together. And as a matter of fact, I shared a flyer just today, right, with Sheikh, what should we call it? Akil Ingram, Mufti Munir, all these black sheikhs, right? All these black imams and whatnot, right? And not all of them are Salafi. Like there's some of them are different ones, right? But they're coming together now, right? And they're doing a conference on brotherhood, right? You can probably look it up, but I was like,
exactly.
This is the type of stuff that we need to be doing, right? Because our issues are very, very specific and pointed,
Yeah.
But
And
to be honest, we're waiting for the Somalis to finally catch up and wake up. To be honest, right? Because there are many, many Somalis. There's a lot of Somalian talent, a lot, right?
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to Quran, Sunnah, and knowledge and this type of things, right? And for some strange reason, y'all are still operating like a clan or a tribe or something like that in the West.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And that's the demise. You know what? It just goes to show you human beings, how Allah created us. First of all, this world is temporary. As much as it's temporary, Allah has put in every community some type of pitfalls, so that you don't even take them to the level of like out of humanity or out of manhood, so that you can see their flaws and their like shortcomings, and that puts you into a humble feeling, saying like, Subhanallah, Allah needed this for purpose. It's not coincidence.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think like yeah, and I think like every community has their own pitfalls, and one of our pitfalls is like, instead of us coming together, bringing this deen to here and taking it up, we are still looking at each other from the same lens that we were looking back, like you said, from tribalism. And I'm like, brother, if this guy is 30 years old man, and Allah give him this or this like age, who am I to say you are different tribe, you don't belong here? Who am I?
And the amazing thing is that you see the destruction of tribalism happening to the Somali community in real time, not just in Somalia, but all over the earth now. And they're still not getting
and
it.
they're still not getting it. They're still not getting it. And I'm like, you know what?
Specifically them, right? It's specifically them.
I said, if we had shootings at a funeral, brother, what is that? What is left?
Yes, exactly.
It's like, you know what? It's like you say, oh Allah, please take me away right now. I have nothing else. I have nothing good to expect from this world anymore. All we have to wait is the Dajjal and like Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And I'm like, you know what? We might even be some of the Ya'juj and Ma'juj that we talked about. To be honest with you, sometimes I'm like, this is beyond. I'm like, what happened to the logic and aql?
Yeah.
When are you gonna say, you know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna stand in front of Allah. I'm gonna be asked all these things. I was not created out of dust. I'm gonna be asking everything. And if I contribute to these problems, 1 cent of it or 1.1% of it, I'm gonna be asked.
Yeah.
So it's like, what am I living for? My life is not infinity.
Yes,
I'm not gonna be here for forever. At some point, it's gonna cut, and I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna be asked. So why can't we even think at that level? The minute you reach that level, then all these other nonsense things are gonna go away, and you're gonna have a pure, clean heart to say, "Who needs my help right now?"
And I said it before, and I said it again. Like just to add to what you were saying, right? That the one good thing about racism is that it made tribalism irrelevant. That's the only good thing, right? If you can look at your community and say all of that, right?
Yeah.
if you get rid of the tribalism, then which community do you belong to?
We belong to the community of the racism.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You're gonna fall
So
into that category.
so now you have Somalis talking about that we ain't black, we're not black,
Oh,
all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
their whole existence is operating as what in the West is operating as black people with their denial, right? And they still can't see it.
You know, like this brother in Living Color, when Michael Jackson, he made a song called "I Don't Care If You Black or White" or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
made
yeah.
a skit in Living Color,
Yeah, yeah.
him getting arrested.
Am I black or white? Yeah,
Yeah, they
that
made a
was very
skit.
funny. Yeah,
They made a skit him getting arrested. And
yeah.
always when I look at these ones nowadays, it's like all about views
Mm,
and like how many likes you get and
mm,
what you can generate from YouTube monetary wise. And I'm like, why are you studying that low?
mm,
I swear to God, I would rather go out and work at a gas station or McDonald's.
mm.
And instead of me trying to deny who I am, on top of that, trying to tell my enemy, I am not who you think I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Which he,
And it's
which he
not making
doesn't give
any
a rap
sense.
at, which he doesn't care, and he will still treat
Yeah,
you.
he's going to treat you like you're a black person. Duh.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. What difference is it gonna make if I say I'm not black? Okay, well,
Mhm.
go. I like you up still,
Yeah, and
and
now
now you're a statistic.
we see in French Africa, the black French Africans, the sub-Saharan Africans, they
Yeah,
have now
Northern Africa.
they've united now. They've united based upon their black Africanness. You got me? You have Niger, you have Guinea,
Yep,
you
the
have Guinea.
Pan Africanism
Yeah.
is coming back.
Yes.
That
Yes.
Lumumba talked about in
Yeah.
1952.
Yes.
And I hope it doesn't stop and it goes to United States of Africa. See,
Mm,
once we come to understand even the boundaries,
mm,
sometimes I see an Ethiopian person. I
mm,
swear I see an African American person, maybe from Boston, and I say, "Are you Somali?" And he goes, "No, I'm not." And he
mm.
goes like, "I'm an African American," and then I go like, "Oh my God, look what they did to us." I'm like, there is no way I can believe
Mm.
you're not from East Africa.
Yeah,
Wallahi.
exactly. Exactly.
And then I said to myself, if we remove these stupid boundaries that they did for us, they said,
Mm,
this is Sudan, this is Ethiopia, this is Somalia.
mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
imagine Marcus Garvey. What his vision was, forget this place, let's go back where we
Yeah.
came from, where we belong.
Yeah,
I'm
Africa
like,
for the Africans.
yeah, why can't we have that mentality?
Mhm.
Why can't we have that mentality?
Sister Tika, may Allah reward you and bless you and multiply it for you a millionfold. Ameen, ameen. Jazakumullah khair. Amazing
Ameen, Ya Rabbi.
topic.
Ameen,
Everybody say ameen for Sister
Ameen,
Tika.
Ameen, Ameen, Ya Rabbi, Ameen.
And brother
Ameen.
C.L. Edwards, what you got for us, bro?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What's going on, bro?
SubhanAllah. Good show, brother. Good show. You know,
Hayakallah.
it seems like you know, people of African descent, no matter where we are at, they've done a real number on us psychologically and culturally.
Mhm.
We're completely messed up, you know. But you know, the mentality we were just talking about with the East African brothers and whatnot,
Mm,
that's global.
mm,
It's global, you know.
Yep.
Even with the black people in the Caribbeans, the black people in South America, they got the same exact mentality.
mm.
You know, I know black. I know black. I'm Dominican.
Dominican.
I know black. I know black. I'm Puerto
Dominicans especially.
Rican. I know black.
Especially, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's
Especially
the same
Dominicans.
mentality.
Yeah.
I'm
but,
Jamaican. I'm no black.
Mm. You brought in
know.
the same slave ships as everybody else,
Yep.
right? You know, and it's so insane because Dominica is like not even a country that's maybe just over 100 years old, right?
Yep.
Right? You know what I mean? And it was the Spanish who made up the race system to begin with, right? The race system
Yes.
was about economics, right? They the ones who made it
Yep.
up. So, and it's so ironic that these folks they accepted it wholeheartedly. But you know why the Dominicans they ride so hard for not being black? is because they're right next to Haiti,
Hey,
right?
and they're blocking the border from Haiti to come in and say like,
Exactly.
nope, yep,
Exactly. And the Haitians, they accepted their Africanness and they united and they fought the slavers, the Europeans, the French at that time, and they overthrew the French at that time, right?
yep,
And
Mhm.
and that's why up until this very day, the Americans and the French, they are punishing Haiti up until this very day for
yep.
that slave revolt.
Subhanallah.
Did you hear that their America just promised to spend up to 100, I think it was 100 million or 100 billion, I can't remember, 100 million donate to an international force to go into Haiti from
Yes,
Africa,
yes,
from
yes.
African soldiers to go into Haiti.
Yeah, yeah.
That's nuts.
These are how these demons are. You know
Yep.
what I mean? But like all things wicked and evil, eventually Allah gives the people a choice, right? If
Yep.
you choose to follow Allah and repent, He's gonna make you successful over your enemies. He will make you successful over your enemies, and there's nothing that your enemy can do to stop it, right? With all their strength and their power and everything, right? But if you repent and you return to Allah, that's the condition, right? And that's what we're seeing. I'm not sure if you heard what happened in Philly recently, a few months ago. I want to do a live on that too. But literally hundreds of kids in Philly converted to Islam ended up in Sheikh Tahir's Wyatt's masjid.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And
This was
that's beautiful.
and
That's beautiful.
yeah,
You
without
still
the
got
help,
shahadas going on in Philly.
yeah, without the help of those folks who are trying to twitch and twirl and twerk to the alt right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They out there.
The brother gets it on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, he gets on both sides.
You
Right?
got the alt right on one. You got the alt right on one side. You got
Mhm.
the SP crowd on the other side.
Exactly. Right. So these are the type of things that we need to support. You know what I mean? And I'm not afraid to say that us as Black Muslims, we have to be more serious in supporting ourselves. Right?
Without a doubt. Without
Yeah.
a doubt.
Why are we
Without
always
a doubt.
chasing other folks to integrate with them? That make no sense to me. You know what I mean? We got our own problems that nobody cares about. Right? As a matter of fact, they benefit greatly off of our problems. You get me? So go ahead, brother CL and brother Dolan.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, there's just so much that we need to do, but you like the hustle, as you said, it is to return back to Allah. All these black folks, whether it's black Muslims, black Christians, black Hebrew Israelites, they all sitting reading about Musa alayhi salam. They all reading this story. We've been reading this story for 400 years now. So, we still haven't really got the lesson yet. We don't see ourselves in it as of yet. And the slave master knew that. That's why he made the slave Bible, and he took that part out of the Bible.
Exactly, intentionally.
Yeah, he took the story of Musa out of the Bible.
Yep. They remember Nat Turner when he started reading the Old Testament, and then he just went bonkers on them crackers, man. You know what I mean? He went nuts. So Nat Turner is my hero. Okay, Nat Turner is my hero. I don't care what anybody say. We need a heck of a lot more Nat Turners. Okay. Anyways, brother Abdullah, I'll let you get some last words, and brother C, I'll let you get some last words. We'll call it a night, inshallah.
Allah, Jazakallahu khair. Allah says in the Quran, Inna ma'al usri yusra. Whatever hardship that we're going through, I hope it's going to make us resilient and strong, and just make us to realize to put all these people into one basket together.
Ameen.
Jazakallahu khair for everything, and Jazakallahu khair for everybody else.
Ameen. Go ahead, brother CL.
Yeah, I was just gonna, all that we have to get rid of that tribal mentality. If you're gonna be North America, you have to play the North American game
Mm-hmm.
based on the
Yep.
North American rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You can't bring rules from your country into North America and expect
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna work. You're being extremely naive. But we could say that to we turn blue in the face.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't listening.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to learn the hard way.
Y'all gonna learn. Y'all gonna
Oh,
Oh,
learn.
oh,
They
most definitely, most definitely. To be honest
yeah,
with
you're gonna
you,
learn the hard way.
to be honest with you, the heat is coming up. The
Mm-hmm.
heat
Yeah.
is approaching.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of us maybe are in the dark, still didn't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But when the problem knocks on your own door, that's when some of us wake up. They go like, oh, what's going on? Where are we? What have I done wrong? That's when we do like self like calculation, and then
Mm-hmm.
you find out, well, I'm doing this in here and it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
They say
I just want
when in Rome, act like a Roman.
like Rome.
Yeah.
That's and one last point. As far as the mentality of the of if we were to drop all this tribalism, we were begin to behave in at in an international way, just like the white man does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't see France is not getting in wars with England anymore. Germany ain't getting in wars. Well, I was about to say Russia, but the rest of the Western European nations, they're not
Europeans.
warring with
They're
each
not fighting each
other.
other.
They got the European Union
Mm-hmm.
and they got NATO.
They're cousins.
Now,
Yep.
yeah, so they're all united. Even Australia's Australia gets to be a part of it. It's on the other side of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because why? Because it was a former white colony ran by white people.
Mm-hmm.
If you just think about it, if all the black populated nations in the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and the sporia all across America and into Europe, Canada, whatever, we could be our own economic bloc. We could do business amongst each other
Yeah.
internationally, shipping goods back and forth to each other, and you would create millionaires, thousandaires, millionaires, and billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
The potential there.
the brother reminded me a point I wanted to say earlier. Um, when we talk about immigrants, especially the Muslim immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
and in America and in Canada, we forgetting about the European white immigrants that come here that right away without any hint
Mm-hmm.
mingle and they start saying like the black neighbor, I can live next to them.
Yeah, that's the Ukrainians. They doing that right now in Britain.
Exactly.
I was thinking that
Exactly.
They're doing that right now in
Exactly.
Britain. Yeah,
And guess
yeah.
what? Guess what? Right now, they are about to bring another whatever, how many millions it is of Ukrainians into
Mm-hmm.
this country. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, they are planning. He's sending a lot of money to Ukraine to start another war. To say, oh, we have this many immigrants from Ukraine that we're gonna bring here. Look at the Russian Jews that come to every state in America.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something about these Ukrainians, bro. Right?
Yeah.
Right now, the European countries and Canada and America are trying their best to woo Ukrainians to stay in the West. So much so, I'm not sure if you've seen this in the news, right?
Uh-huh.
But the Ukrainian president came to Canada, okay,
Yes. Yep.
and he brought some guest of his from Ukraine that worked with him, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
What most people don't know is that Ukraine is an actual Nazi country, okay, which is why one of the big reasons that Russia annexed it, and it's a big reason why Russia made a deal with NATO and the UN that Ukraine can never be a part of
NATO.
NATO, yeah, European Union, right?
Yep.
NATO, right? So,
Yeah.
anyways, he brings his whatever guest, and the Speaker of the House in Canada introduces the guest, and blah blah blah, and the whole whatchamacallit, what do you call it? The whole house all the
The whole house
politicians,
or everybody
yeah,
who was there. Yeah,
they all applauded this guy, right? The
yeah.
next day, here comes the Jewish people saying, why are Canadians applauding a Nazi? The
That's
very
power.
next day.
That is
That's
power. That
yes.
is power.
Yeah, but it's power. What it is power on both sides, because to me it looks like that was done intentionally.
Yeah.
Because
The
you
stage
got to
on the
understand,
stage.
if you understand how these folks think, right now there is a global push for right wing leadership throughout the world, and India right now has assassinated at least 2 people on Canadian soil, right? And they're running a massive propaganda campaign because Prime Minister Trudeau called it out, right? And then you have this Ukrainian president bringing a Nazi, okay, and getting all the Canadian Parliament to applaud him, and then so much so that the Speaker of the House resigned today because of that incident. That just happened a couple of days ago, okay? He
Oh my
resigned.
God.
He resigned today. So these folks are shaping Western politics as we speak. And I said it before, and I will say it again.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Wow.
The next president of the United States is going to be either Trump or Trump's son or Trump-esque. It's going to be a MAGA far right president, right? And it'll most likely probably be, in terms of what we know as the United States, probably the last president that we see. Right? It's going to be a new system after that. Mark my words, okay? Mark my words, because this is happening globally. It's not just happening in the States, right? So
But if
the
you
whole,
look at it, the words are written on the wall already.
yeah, rates are really written on the wall, right? There you
Yeah.
have literally trillions of US dollars going to head back to the States because the BRICS nations have already set up their current currency.
Yeah.
So, and they've invited, I think, and the numbers like right now, it's like 15 different nations into BRICS. And
Yep.
many of them are African, and from these nations include Saudi Arabia, right?
Yep. China, India,
Which
Brazil.
is
Yep.
essentially the pillar of
Yep.
the greenback. The U.S. greenback is from Saudi Arabia, right? Because the Saudi dinar is basically based upon the U.S. USD,
US dollar. Yep.
and it's backed by that Saudi oil, right?
Oil.
So
Yep. Yeah.
so you have Saudi Arabia, you have Iran, right, who has joined BRICS nations. Okay,
Brazil. Yep.
Brazil has always been an original
Right,
member, right?
Brazilian.
Because Brazil,
Ethiopia.
yeah. So several African nations, which means that literally trillions of US dollars are going to go right back to the States. And I promise you, right, you're going to see these politicians talk about reparations for Black people, and Black people might actually get it because of these trillions of dollars coming back. But it's a whole scam and it's a whole game because those
Yeah.
dollars are going to be worthless. And it's just like what Jamil Alameen said when he was H. Brett Brown. He says, "Black folks are chumps. If America tell you to gather 1,000,000 rocks and give you $1 million for it, you will do it." The next day she said, "We're using rocks for currencies, chump." It's going to be exactly like that. It'll be that's what your reparations is going to be, right?
Yeah. Anyway, it's gonna be useless.
It's going to be completely useless. Yeah. But anyways, I'll let y'all get the last words and we'll call it a night. Go ahead.
Go ahead, brother. See ya.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Jazakallah khair for everything, for your education.
Jazakallah khair, jazakallah khair. Ayakumullah. All right, family. Jazakallah khair. Thanks for everybody who joined me tonight. I want to send a special shout out for everybody who joined me. I want to send an extra special shout out to Sister Tika. May Allah reward you and bless you and multiply it for you 1,000,000-fold. Ameen. Ameen. And we will see you guys. I think I'm going live tomorrow. Tomorrow, seriously, I'm going to come out tomorrow. I'll see y'all tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.